This is a new episode of JoyScorePodcast. I am Dr. J with Colleen Mogawan, and we're going to talk about self-acceptance.
Yes. So I think the first thing I wanted to talk about with self-acceptance is addressing what exactly it is. Because I think right now there is such a buzz around self-love and a lot of self-love movements. And a lot of people think that there is that self-love and self-acceptance are the same thing, which they are, but I think, and many others as well, that to get to a place of self-love, we have to first address self-acceptance, which is like the very first step to any self-love journey that anyone goes on. And for self-acceptance is really about honoring wherever you're at right now.
So self-acceptance, you're saying that instead of judging yourself, you start accepting yourself.
Yes.
And recognize that even if there are some flaws, maybe you're not perfect, it's okay. Nobody is perfect, because we all, in our own ways, have some goods and bads, some accomplishments, some failures, and but we don't need to beat ourselves up,
Exactly. And I think with so much with social media as well being such a big thing, we're sold this idea of perfectionism and how you should be, how you should act, how you should look. And that can really affect people's self-esteem, because we see what we classify as this perfect person, and then we start to compare ourselves, and that's when that acceptance, self-acceptance can stop. We can stop accepting who we are. And
so
as well, I think
to start with, then I guess we have to accept the fact that we don't have to be perfect.
Yeah. Exactly. That is like the main thing.
Right.
And I think as well is something that's really important to accept yourself is actually to know who you are, if that makes sense.
Yes.
To like have
go ahead.
Yeah, just to have a clear knowledge of who you truly are, so that you can accept yourself.
The three things which kind of connect with each other in some ways, like you talked about self-acceptance, self-love, and then joy. So let's say, for discussion's sake, if you're not accepting yourself and loving yourself, then chances are you're going to also have difficulty being joyful. And joyful, or to be joyful, is somewhat necessary for us to succeed in life. It's like the prerequisite to success. Now, we bring a couple other areas of awareness before joy, which is self-acceptance, self-love, and joy. So I guess, and I could be wrong, and you can tell me what you think, it seems to me that if someone is able to have self-acceptance, self-love, they automatically start being joyful.
Yes. Yes. And a quote that comes to me is only hurt people hurt people. So
Uh-huh.
someone who is truly accepts himself and loves himself has no reason to discriminate against others or to judge others. They're truly happy in their lives, and that radiates out to others. You can look at people that do have that self-acceptance and self-love and see how much joy they have in their life and the joy that they bring to others as well, because they already have that acceptance and that love within them. They can give that out.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so absolutely. In fact, it can influence how we deal with self-respect, relationships, and so on. It just kind of everything. And you mentioned judgment, and that also has an important role it plays in our life and how we perceive others. So we have to stop judging others. And I think we also have to stop judging ourselves.
Yes.
So it's like we can start with ourselves. Don't self-judge and accept who you are the way you are. And accept that you can love yourself. It's okay to love yourself. It's also okay to respect yourself, So all these things, it seems like if we can first experiment on ourselves, then we can apply to others.
Yeah.
It becomes easier.
Yeah, 100%. And I think something, because it's so easy for us to say, just accept yourself.
Right.
But for many of us, that is a battle. It's not easy to accept yourself, and it's not easy to love yourself. If it was easy, then we'd all be very happy with ourselves. No one would change anything about themselves. We'd all be much more joyful, as you say. But something that I found really profound in accepting myself is realizing, when was the first time that you stopped accepting yourself? Because when we're younger, and when we're children, majority of us, we simply are. We're not worried what others think of us. We don't really, we take up space and we accept ourselves. We are who we are. And it becomes like a point in our life where perhaps someone said something, perhaps you were getting bullied, or a comment from a family member, or maybe someone you didn't know. And then we start to think, oh, okay, I have to be less of me, or I have to change something about myself in order to fit in. And that's when we lose that acceptance of ourselves. And that's why I was saying that it's so important to know who you are truly. Because if you start to not accept yourself and change parts of yourself in order to fit in, then you can lose sight of who you really are. And then you'll feel lost. And often that's something that a lot of us do feel. We feel so disconnected from ourselves. And with the pressure of social media and other things, society in general, and this feeling that we must fit in, it can really damage that self-acceptance and that self.
So there is a fine line between having things which you may say are part of self-improvement, meaning you may have goals that you have established that you want to achieve these goals. And some of it may also deal with self-acceptance, or it might have a component of that. So even though we may have a list of things to achieve, some of those could be part of the self-acceptance aspects, but still doesn't mean that we cannot accept ourselves how and who we are.
Yeah.
And then also accept that, okay, we are not perfect. We have some areas for improvement, and that's part of life. There's nothing wrong with that. So it's not like a negative thing, or it's not like a weakness. It's just that we have established some goals to achieve, and we have a list of things, of accomplishments that we want to pursue. Perfectly okay. But still, we have to learn to self-respect, respect our feelings, self-love, self-empowerment, and all those things. And because otherwise, we are going to be in a dark space that we don't want to be in.
I think as well, some people can think if we accept ourselves, then that means that we won't ever change, that we'll stay in the same, which isn't true. I think as well, accepting ourselves means that we can bring about change, but from a place of love, which is much more different than coming from a place of fear or a place of self-hate. You know, you can bring that change. Say, for example, you know, maybe you feel like you aren't at your healthiest and you haven't been exercising, you've been eating a lot of rubbish. And there's two different ways to look at that. You know, if you accept yourself, you say, okay, I am fine as I am, you know, where I am is okay. But I know that these things like exercising, eating well are good for me and I should do more of them. Then we can change ourselves, but from a place of love, while still accepting where we are. And that's a really big difference between the two of them, creating change from love and creating change from fear.
Yeah. I think the big difference I see in what you said, that place of fear is going to give you stress, and place of love is going to be enjoying that whole concept of improvement, change, whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Exactly. And I think it is such a, you know, accepting yourself is such a big step. Like I say, it's the very first step in taking any real change, is accepting where you are. And that can relate to any change you want to create in your life. Accepting where you are in your circumstances, accepting how you feel, like you mentioned, your feelings, accepting when, you know, you have when you have a bad day as well, as part of self-acceptance. Because we go through all these emotions, we have good days, we have bad days. And the more we practice self-acceptance as well, we can accept when we are having a bad day. We can say, hey, I'm not feeling too great today, but that's okay. This is where I am.
Right.
And we let go of that attachment to it. So maybe tomorrow I'll feel better, rather than try and fight it as well.
Actually, that whole idea is very powerful, you know, in self-development. And so you said that in order for us to have self-love, we have to have self-acceptance.
Yes.
So that's step number one.
Yes.
And once we have self-love, then we also can be ready to love others.
Yes.
So, and you know, without love in our life and our ability to love others, life becomes very difficult. So that's a good thing to achieve. Anything else you want to tell us about self-acceptance before we close?
I think that something really important to remind yourself is to know that, is to remind yourself that you are worthy of your own acceptance and that it's safe for you to accept yourself. And a tool that many use, and I'm sure you've probably used it as well, as affirmations. Very powerful tool. I think it was Louise Hay that really was the first person to bring about affirmations. And that really helped me on my self-acceptance journey, to speak these words to myself, to say, even if I didn't feel it, I accept myself. I accept myself. I love myself. And the more that you say it, the more you change the wiring in your brain. Because, we spend most of our lives in our head. And a lot of the time, we're living from this negative mindset. And I know I was living from a space where I was saying, I hate myself. I'm this, I'm that. I'm really talking negative to myself. And I'm pretty sure all of us have done it. It's so easy to do. And with affirmations, we then begin to change that thinking. So a nice analogy for this is to imagine that there is a field filled with snow, and you begin walking down a path, and you have to fight through the path, but then it becomes easier. So you're walking in the same path, and you've made it nice, you've made it easy. And that is your old pathway. So you've decided that is it. This is the pathway I'm going to stick with. And that could be you in that negative mindset. But one day you decide, you know what? I'm not going to walk this path anymore. I'm going to change. I'm going to turn back and start a new path. And the first time that you do it, it's going to be difficult. You're fighting through the snow. It's going to be very difficult. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and you can lead a new path. So if you think of that as your brain, the more you speak these affirmations, the more you begin to believe it. And it's so true, because if someone says something to you enough, then we start to notice that, and we see that in ourselves. If someone compliments you, then you go, okay, well, maybe my hair is nice, And speaking these words, whatever resonates with you, can really change that mindset and can really help you to see yourself in a different way for the very first time.
But what happens if someone criticizes you or comes and says something negative? Do you accept it, or you just decline to accept it?
When we get to a place of self-acceptance and knowing who we are, then outside comments don't affect us as much, because we're saying, I know who I am. And what you are saying, whatever that is your perception of me. Okay. That's a reflection on you and not me. So if that is something negative, then you can say, I know who I am. And if I'm living from this place of self-acceptance and self-love, then I don't need outside approval. Right. And I don't have to listen to other people's opinions, or not even opinions, to accept other people's negativity towards, because there's always going to be people that, one, don't like you or have something to say. And like I say, hurt people. So that is a reflection on them and not on you. Yeah.
Very good. So I think this was a great episode and podcast on self-acceptance. Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you so much.